Okay, so Edmond Dantès gets betrayed, thrown in prison, and left there to rot. And just when he started to lose everything, including his faith, a demon shows up with an offer. He'll get freedom, revenge, but it comes with one hell of a catch. Now, would you sell your soul to get revenge on the ops? I don't know about all that, but this is the Curse of Monte Cristo. Marcel, France, 1788. Edmond Dantès has been sentenced to life for treason at the Château, an isolated prison fortress surrounded by water. As he spends his days doing hard labor, Edmond reflects on just how prophetic that sentence would become. When he first arrived here, he still had hope. Having faith in God, he believed that it wouldn't last forever. The other prisoners around him had already been reduced to empty husks of men that they used to be. But there is one man who stood out. He wasn't a prisoner, and he doesn't seem to be a guard either, but somehow he moves freely through the prison. And more importantly, he's always watching Edmond. Sometimes he'll just stand outside his cell staring at him, waiting. Edmond has no idea what for. And it's hella creepy how he just stands there. With little else to escape into, Edmond finds some relief in his memories. And we go back 8 years, because apparently this isn't Edmond's first time in captivity. Back in Saint-Domingue, Edmond was enslaved, and during his escape, we see him wrap a chain around one of those captors and choke him out. But ultimately, what gets Edmond out of Saint-Domingue is something he'd always believed was nothing more than a myth. The boatman. There's an old nursery rhyme about him. He'll either ferry you to the land of the dead or to a new life free of dread. But eventually, there's a toll, and that toll may very well be your immortal soul. Edmond takes his chances. The boatman carries him to the docks, allowing him to escape Saint-Domingue and eventually start a new life in Paris. But even after reaching freedom, Edmond knows in his heart that one day the boatman is going to come to collect. Back at the prison, the warden snaps Edmond out of his memories and sarcastically asks whether he'd like a break. Maybe some tea and crumpets in bed too? He reminds Edmond that he's the warden of this godforsaken rock, and he'll decide when Edmond gets to rest. Edmond answers that a place can only be godforsaken if you don't have God in your heart, which probably wasn't the answer that man was looking for. He accuses him of talking back, pulls out the whip, and promises to beat Jesus out of him. And this isn't the first time. The warden will find practically any excuse to beat Edmond, and through every beating, Edmond finds himself wondering, where is God, and why has he forsaken him? 5 years later, Edmond is back in his cell, and after years of imprisonment, my man is talking to a cockroach. He's even made the little guy his pet. At this point, Edmond is starting to lose his grip on reality. He escapes into fantasies where he and his lady were together, talking about the beautiful children they'll have someday. But every time he comes back to reality, he's still here and still trapped. Then Faria appears. He seems to come out of nowhere, but Edmond doesn't question it too much. After being alone for so long, he's probably just happy to have somebody to talk to him besides that damn cockroach. Edmond assumes Faria is some kind of defrocked monk, someone who fell out of the church, but Faria never really explains himself. And there's something strange about him too. The guards never really acknowledge Faria, neither do the other prisoners. Faria can literally make faces at the guard standing right in front of him, and the man doesn't even react. Still, Edmond and Faria become fast friends. He opens up entirely a new world to him. He teaches Edmond to read, educates him in mathematics, science, medicine, astronomy, and even sword fighting. Now, this part does come from the original Count of Monte Cristo. Faria becomes Edmond's teacher there too. The difference is, that Faria was definitely a prisoner. This one, not so much. Years pass, and Faria never appears to age. Eventually, a guard hears Edmond talking and tells him to shut up. Not them, him. Because as far as everyone else can tell, Edmond is sitting in his cell talking to himself. Now, even Edmond has to ask whether he's lost his mind. Faria finally gives him the truth though. The others can't see him because he isn't of this realm. Edmond's desire for revenge drew him here, and in 3 days, he'll return with an offer. Before disappearing, he leaves one more message. The boatman sends his regards. That's interesting because he's clearly not the boatman. For the next 3 days, Faria is nowhere to be found. Then on the third night, he comes back, and this time he drops the disguise. Faria reveals himself as a demon. He tells Edmond he can sense a story of betrayal and misery inside of him, and he wants to hear it. The guard outside has had enough. He's tired of Edmond yapping to himself every night. He opens the cell and marches inside, threatening to shut Edmond up for good. What he doesn't realize is there's a whole ass demon chilling in that corner. The guard moves to beat Edmond up, and Faria grabs him by the back of the head and electrocutes his ass. Apparently, he doesn't appreciate being interrupted. Faria turns his attention back to Edmond. He says he can smell rebellion and death on him, and he wants to see where it came from. So he reaches into Edmond's mind, and we finally get to check out his backstory. Edmond was born enslaved. At only 8 years old, he was separated from his parents and sold. He never saw them again. But as he grew older, Edmond became determined to throw off the yoke of bondage. Eventually, he joined an uprising, and for a moment they actually won. But their victory didn't last. The French army arrived and seized control again. Faria knows Saint-Domingue well. There have been plenty of deaths there, but Edmond refuses to return to slavery. Eventually, he escapes aboard a ship bound for Paris, the Pharaon. Its Captain Leclerc finds him and gives him something Edmond hasn't had much of in his life, a chance. Leclerc is a man of God, and rather than turning Edmond away, he hires him as part of his crew. There's just one problem. Payroll requires a surname, and Edmond doesn't have one. So Leclerc tells him he reminds him of one of the characters from Dante Alighieri's Inferno. So he gives him a name, Edmond Dantès, and for the first time in a long time, Edmond gets to live. He takes to the ocean and works his way through the ranks, eventually becoming first mate. For a formerly enslaved man, it's more freedom than he could have imagined. He travels, he sees foreign ports, he breathes open air, and one day he swears he'll own a ship himself. Then he'll return to Saint-Domingue and fight to free his people. Even if he dies trying. Faria already knows this isn't how the story ends. Before Edmond ever got the chance, he was betrayed. Edmond admits he believed his position aboard the Pharaon might protect him from some of the prejudice surrounding him. He was wrong. And he had severely underestimated just how deep the hatred of black skin could run. And I actually really like what this adaptation is doing here. The original Count of Monte Cristo was written by Alexandre Dumas, who was of Haitian descent through his father, and this version is pulling Edmond's story directly into the history of Saint-Domingue and slavery. So they're not just changing Edmond's background for its own sake, the adaptation deliberately brings that part of Dumas's heritage into the story. On Edmond's final voyage aboard the Pharaon, Captain Leclerc falls gravely ill. The two pray together one last time, and Leclerc gives him his rosary. The captain never survives the journey home, sadly. When the ship finally returns to France, its owner Morel promotes Edmond to captain of the Pharaon. For someone who was born enslaved, Edmond has somehow made it all the way here. Free, respected, captain of his own ship. But unfortunately for him, this is where his story really begins. Because like any good tragedy, we've got a cast of characters. Edmond's beautiful fiancée comes from a prominent merchant family. Now that Edmond is the captain of the Pharaon, her family can't really deny their union, so Edmond's doing pretty damn good. My man is fine, free, captain of his own ship, and he got a baddie. So naturally, here comes a hater. Fernand is supposed to be Edmond's friend. He was born into wealth and high standing, so you'd think he'd have enough going for him to be happy for the man. Nope. So while Edmond thinks that's his best man's, this man is hating. He's a hater. He a hater and he wants his girl. Not you looking like you about to throw it cause they kissing. That's crazy. Then there's Baron Danglars. Danglars worked aboard the Pharaon and had been making Edmond's life difficult since he first joined the crew. He overly petty, and he's a bigot. He believes he should have been made captain. What Edmond doesn't know is that Fernand and Danglars know each other, but Faria does. And as he digs deeper into Edmond's memories, he shows him exactly what was happening behind his back. Fernand admits the only reason he ever got close to Edmond in the first place was because of Mercedes. He thought if he stayed close enough, eventually he'd find an opportunity to get in where he fit in. But now Edmond and Mercedes are getting married, and that opportunity is disappearing. Danglars has his own reason for hating. As far as he's concerned, the Pharaon should have already been his. He'd sooner watch the ship burn than see a black man at the helm. Man, now you just hating on the brother for what? I could see why. I mean, look at the man hairline. Like you hating with that hairline. Like I could see why. It purely had to been off the hairline. Faria continues pulling through Edmond's memories, and eventually they arrive at another player in his downfall, Gerald de Villefort. To the public, Villefort is an honorable magistrate, renowned for his work. Behind closed doors, not so honorable. Before climbing his way into that respectable position, Villefort was corrupt, taking bribes and helping finance gambling and other nightlife. Looking back on everything now, Edmond can't understand how he missed all the daggers pointed at his back. He was so naive, and he thinks maybe his faith had something to do with it too. He would have recognized how easily people could hate him because no matter what Edmond accomplished, to people like Danglars, he would always be a slave. And sitting alone in his cell, Edmond starts questioning the faith that once gave him so much comfort. He thinks about the image of Jesus he spent his entire life worshiping and wonders why Jesus never looked like him. Why is Jesus expected to suffer for sins he hasn't committed? He's been a good man and he treats people right. He doesn't cheat and he pays his damn taxes. So what did he do to deserve any of this? Edmond eventually rises from his prayer, still without an answer, and as he walks away, a crow flies past him. At that point, knowing what we know about Faria, yeah, that's definitely his creepy ass. The sight takes Edmond back to the stormy night his captain died, the night that unknowingly sealed his fate. While Edmond manned the Pharaon through the storm, Captain Leclerc lay dying below deck, and looking back, Edmond wonders if Faria had been there that night too, watching, maybe even mocking him. The captain knows he isn't going to survive the voyage, so on his deathbed, he entrusts his loyal first mate with one final task, 2 letters. One is meant for a man named Bertrand, the other, Noirtier. And whatever Edmond does, he is to tell no one about them. Edmond agrees, but what he doesn't know is that Leclerc had connections to the revolutionaries who overthrew the monarchy. And these weren't innocent little letters. They were intended for his collaborators. But Edmond doesn't know any of that. He's simply carrying out the final wishes of a man he loves and respects. And there was another reason Leclerc couldn't trust him with them. Edmond could chart a course across the high seas. He could take control of a ship in the middle of a violent storm, but he couldn't read, and Leclerc was counting on that. Edmond has no idea what's closing in around him. That snow bunny princess got him in a chokehold. He and Mercedes are talking about their future together. Soon they'll be husband and wife, and as far as he's concerned, nothing is going to stop that. Edmond playfully asks her whether even the color of his skin could get in the way, but Mercedes tells him not to tease her. She loves the color of his skin. Besides, they're going to make beautiful babies, but that catches Edmond off guard. He does want children, it's just that he never really allowed himself to think that far ahead. For most of his life, the future wasn't something Edmond could count on. He was born enslaved for years. Simply being free was just the dream. And now, not only is he free, he's the captain of his own ship. He's about to marry the woman he loves, and for the first time, he's imagining a life beyond survival. Looking back from the prison cell, Edmond realizes just how blissfully ignorant he was. Because while he was dreaming about everything his future could become, the people around him were already preparing to take it away. Edmond delivers the first letter to a man named Bertrand, telling him it came from the late Captain Leclerc. Bertrand thanks him, and Edmond goes on his way. Simple as that. Looking back, Edmond assumes Mercedes must have told Fernand about the letters, but Faria can show exactly what happened next. This is where the conspiracy really begins. Fernand and Danglars show up at Villefort's door, claiming they have urgent business. Apparently, they come to help him. Just look at these two ops. Danglars pulls out the intercepted treason letter, while both of them stand there smirking. And I hate how they actually look alike, like they're genetically engineered to hate. The letter exposes a revolutionary plot and, more importantly for Villefort, implicates his father. If this gets out, it could destroy the family name and Villefort's political ambitions. He sees the play right away. This is blackmail. Fernand prefers to call it an opportunity for all of them. There were 2 letters. One went to Bertrand, and the other was for Villefort Sr. Villefort recognizes the former slave from Saint-Domingue and decides Edmond would be no great loss to society. But Fernand doesn't want him simply murdered. Edmond is too well liked. He's the man in these streets. They need to destroy his reputation first. Make him look like a traitor, then bury him somewhere no one else will listen to him again. Villefort can arrange that. The 3 raise their glasses to Edmond Dantès. To hell with him, and Villefort burns the letter. But Faria isn't finished, because according to him, there's one more betrayal Edmond hasn't understood yet, his beloved Mercedes. Faria tells Edmond that Mercedes was the one who gave Fernand the information he needed to put the dagger in Edmond's back. She'd gotten cold feet about their marriage and the obstacles that would come with an interracial relationship, and when it came time to choose between that uncertain future with Edmond, a young, wealthy white, and safe Fernand, Faria says Mercedes chose Fernand. Edmond takes us back to Saint-Domingue. He's walking through the streets when he notices a crowd gather around an execution. Edmond asks what's going on, and someone tells him they're putting a traitor to death, a man accused of conspiring against the regime. Edmond pushes his way through the crowd, and his stomach drops. It's Bertrand. Before Edmond can do anything, the guillotine falls. Bertrand's head is severed and paraded in front of the crowd. Edmond later learns, to his immense relief, that Bertrand went to his grave without naming any of the fellow conspirators. Later, Mercedes noticed something is bothering him and asks what's wrong. But Edmond hesitates. He hasn't told anyone what he's about to tell her. But this is Mercedes. He trusts her with his heart and soul, so he tells her everything. In his blind loyalty to Captain Leclerc, Edmond may have unknowingly implicated himself in treason. Edmond had no idea what he was carrying at the time, but ignorance isn't necessarily going to save him. And he's terrified that one act of loyalty could be his undoing. So he begs Mercedes, tell no one. She promises she'll take the secret to her grave. Faria snaps Edmond out of the memory, but she didn't. Edmond has replayed what happened a million times, trying to find another explanation. There isn't one. Mercedes was the only person he told, which means as far as Edmond can see, she had to be the one who gave Fernand the information. His beloved betrayed him, and she played her part well. Edmond breaks down. He calls her a liar, a Judas, a Jezebel. His mind goes back to what should have been one of the happiest moments of his life, his wedding day. Edmond and Mercedes are standing at the altar. The priest is just about to announce them husband and wife when soldiers storm the church. Edmond is arrested for treason before he can even seal the marriage with a kiss. And looking back, Edmond doesn't know which hurt worse, being dragged away for a crime he didn't knowingly commit, or believing the person he trusted most in the world that helped put him there. And to make it worse, here comes his main op comforting his girl. Ferdinand tells Mercedes she may hate him for saying it now, but perhaps this has spared her a lifetime of grief and despair. Oh, I'm sure you're very concerned. Edmond's nightmare is only beginning. He's tied up, bloodied, and beaten, and Villefort himself oversees the interrogation. When one method stops getting the reaction he wants, Villefort tells the guards to strike Edmond across the chest instead. Edmond tries to fight back with the one thing he knows. Villefort's father was involved too. Villefort leans in and tells him to be quiet. If Edmond wants to live, he'll keep his mouth shut. And with Edmond beaten and completely at their mercy, Villefort forces him to confess. At this point, Edmond has heard enough. He looks at Faria and asks the only question that matters: what's the offer? For a moment, we see Faria as he truly is, a demon. And his answer is simple: freedom. Edmond asks at what cost, because there's always a price. Faria tells him to willingly allow him in. And in return, Edmond won't just have precious freedom. He'll have power, money, and means to exact revenge against every single person who destroyed him. Edmond pauses. Allow you in? As in possession? What kind of freedom is that? He'd just be trading one prison for another. Faria tells him he's got it all wrong. When a demon enters someone against their will, that's possession. But if Edmond freely welcomes him, that's integration, a union of coexistence. And Edmond already summoned him through his desire for revenge. Faria sweetens the deal. Hidden inside one of his caves is a treasure beyond anything you could imagine. Enough wealth to make one of the richest men in Europe. All Edmond has to do is ask. Edmond looks at the demon, then bows his head. He accepts, and may God have mercy on his soul. Faria tells him this will be the last time he ever kneels to anyone. Edmond asks what happens next. Simple. Faria opens his mouth, and something pours out of him and enters Edmond, violently cracking and twisting his body in every direction. And Faria tells him, next, you die. Sometime later, the guards find Edmond's body. To them, he's just another dead prisoner. So they carry him outside and dump him into the sea. Except Edmond isn't alone anymore. Faria is inside of him, and from somewhere within his body, Edmond hears his voice. Wake up. His eyes open underwater. He's alive. Up on the cliffs, the warden watches Edmond's body disappear beneath the waves and happily says good riddance. But lightning strikes. The blast sends the warden tumbling straight off the cliff and into the ocean. And guess who's waiting for him? Edmond grabs him and chokes him out under the water. Edmond's surprised the first person he got to kill in his new life was the warden. He almost finds it funny. Eventually, Edmond washes above shore. Faria asks what took him so long. Edmond says he spent hours in that water, but luckily the warden's bloated corpse kept him afloat until the current carried him here. Faria tells him everything serves a purpose. There's just one immediate problem. Edmond is starving. But Faria tells him, then eat. Eat to his heart's content. Edmond looked around. Eat what? Faria directs his attention back towards the water. The warden's corpse is still floating nearby. Why? Roast pork. Oh my God. Edmond actually ate this motherfucker. We see this man tearing up some meat on a stick. The next morning, Faria tells him it's time to get started. First, the treasure. Edmond searches through the caves for what feels like forever, wondering where all this promised gold is supposed to be. Then he finds it. Gold, jewels, more wealth than Edmond has ever seen in his life. My God. Faria casually remarks that he had remarkably little to do with this one. Edmond asks who the treasure belonged to. Well, him now. Originally, it belonged to a notorious pirate who plundered his fortune throughout the Caribbean and hid it there while on the run. Unfortunately for the pirate, he died before he could tell anyone where he'd put it. Faria admits he may have helped a little with that, not him finding the damn One Piece. And there's a certain irony to all of this. A fortune built from plunder, now sitting at the feet of a man who was once considered property himself. Edmond promises to put it to good use. Then he asks exactly how much they're talking about. About 80 million francs, give or take. Edmond looks around, and with that kind of money, he could buy the entire island. Faria sees no reason why he shouldn't, and while he's at it, buy himself a title too. The French love titles. Edmond asks the name of the island, and Faria answers, Monte Cristo. And there it is. By 1803, we're back in Saint-Domingue. Mercedes is living a very different life. From the window of an enormous home, she watches a young boy playing outside. She smiles at him, but when she closes her eyes, there's still sadness hanging over her. Then Ferdinand enters. He is older now, complete with a gray streak in his hair, and asks why his wife looks so melancholy. Mercedes brushes it off as one of her moods. Fernand thinks he knows exactly what will cheer her up. There's a ball Saturday night. Apparently some ridiculously wealthy count has just arrived in Saint-Domingue and decided to throw a ball. Mercedes asks who he is. Fernand tells her, the Count of Monte Cristo. Dun dun dun, and baby, Edmond had a glow up. We find him aboard the ship of his own, finally fulfilling the promise he made all those years ago. He's captain now. Edmond asks Faria whether they plotted a course back to France. Nope. 15 years have passed. France has been transformed by revolution, and plenty of nobles have fled the chaos. But the people Edmond wants haven't disappeared. Fernand, Mercedes, Danglars, and Villefort. They're all together in one place, Saint-Domingue. After escaping slavery there, building a new life, losing everything, dying, coming back with a demon inside of him and becoming filthy rich, his revenge is bringing him right back where he started. Edmond can only laugh. God sure has a sense of humor. By the time of his grand party, Edmond has gone from a prison cell to one of the finest estates in Saint-Domingue. And the place is packed with wealthy Parisians who fled the chaos back home. Faria asks if he can smell it. Smell what? Fear. Revolution is contagious, and now it's spreading here. French, Spanish, and British armies have all fought for control, while formerly enslaved people continue fighting for the island themselves. It's why I really like this setting for the adaptation, because this part is rooted in actual Haitian revolutionary history. Saint-Domingue was becoming increasingly impossible for the colonial powers to hold. Edmond is happy to hear it. He wants to punish the guilty and liberate his people. Faria is less noble. As long as there's death and misery to feed on, it's his kind of party. Before they go inside, Edmond asks whether anyone will recognize him. Faria assures him the illusion will hold. As long as Edmond projects the Count of Monte Cristo, that's who everyone will see. Sure enough, we see them making their way one by one through the party. Fernand thanks Mercedes for accompanying him, but she's uneasy about celebrating while everything around them is falling apart. France has endured a revolution. Now there's Napoleon, and Saint-Domingue isn't exactly stable either. Fernand agrees that the madness has spread, especially to the enslaved people, who have apparently gotten in their heads that all men are equal. What? Mercedes says that's a belief she shares as well. Fernand knows. Oh, so he's not only a hater, he's a friggin' racist too. Who would have guessed? Elsewhere, Villefort and Danglars are trying to figure out exactly who their mysterious host is. Danglars has heard the Count is wealthy enough to buy the entire island. Villefort doesn't believe him. Nobody's that rich. But apparently the Count's business stretches across the world. Spices from the Middle East, diamonds from Africa, gold from China, all transported aboard his ship, the Tartarus. Villefort barely has time to question what kind of name Tartarus is before their host is finally announced. Ladies and gentlemen, the Count of Monte Cristo. Edmond descends the staircase, and Fernand starts hating. He leans towards Mercedes, shocked that nobody bothered to mention Saint-Domingue's mysterious new aristocrat was a black man, though, he supposes, with enough gold, maybe it doesn't matter. Mercedes tells him to have some decorum. Sir, you're embarrassing your wife within 30 seconds of entering the function. Edmond walks directly towards him. He glances at the ring on Mercedes' finger, then compliments the lovely couple. He takes her hand, bows, and kisses it. Ferdinand introduces himself, then presents his wife, Mercedes. Edmond smiles. It's a pleasure to meet them both. And somehow, this man is keeping it together. Danglars and Villefort introduces themselves next, both happily buttering up to the mysterious Count. Villefort was just questioning the name of Edmond's ship, and now he's gassing it, talking about how beautiful it is. Danglars mentioned that he captained the ship himself for many years, but nothing quite as impressive as the Tartarus. He spent more than a decade at sea before retiring and loved every minute of it. This stole his ship. Fernand stole his woman, Danglars stole his career, Villefort stole 15 years of his life, and now all three of these mediocre mother are standing in Edmond's house smiling in his face. Faria sees the rage starting to bubble over. S'il vous plaît, excusez-moi. He politely tells the others he needs to borrow the Count for business and gets Edmond the hell out of there. The second they're alone, Edmond loses it. Fernand took Mercedes, Danglars his ship. These men didn't just betray him. They stole his entire life. He punches the mirror and he wants them dead. Faria tells him to calm down. Chill, bruh. Somewhere inside, Edmond had to know this is what he'd find when he returned, and if he truly wants revenge, he needs patience. Surely the Bible taught him that virtue. Faria promises he'll have his vengeance. He'll have destruction, but it needs to be coordinated and drawn out, because Faria intends to feed for a long time. Edmond asks if he can get some air, and he steps outside to clear his head. And he hears a struggle nearby. Two slave hands are attacking an enslaved woman. When they see Edmond dressed in all his finery, one of them mocks him, asking if he's some slave playing dress up. Edmond calmly assures them he is no slave. Then he grabs both men by the throat, lifts them off the ground, and crack! He drops them. The woman stares at Edmond completely stunned. How did you? But Edmond cuts her off. He wants to know what happened. She explains that she escaped with 3 other enslaved people. They were caught. The others were killed, and the 2 men decided to save her for last because they wanted to have some fun first. Yeah, we know what they had in mind. Before Edmond can do anything else, Faria appears. He tells Edmond to clean himself up and get back to the party. He'll handle the mess and escort the woman to the manor where she'll be safe. Edmond thanks him, calling him a good and dear friend. And the woman, still trying to figure out what the hell she just witnessed, asks Faria if Edmond is really an aristocrat. Faria smiles. The richest man she'll ever likely meet. A count, actually. She looks at him suspiciously. Is he in league with the devil? Faria assures her it's nothing that dramatic, just a demon or two. As Edmond heads back toward the manor, Faria and the woman look down at one of the men. Somehow he's still alive, even with his throat ripped out. Faria seems delighted. Well, he can't let that go to waste. I don't know what the demon does to that man afterwards, but judging by her face, I don't think I want to know. Back at the party, Baron Danglars has managed to corner Edmond, and naturally, he's talking about money. Danglars proudly explains that he owns the largest sugar plantation in Saint-Domingue. Edward asks if it's true he owns a bank as well. Danglars confirms it, though he admits his fortune is nothing compared to the Count's. So now he wants to know Edmond's secret. How did one man become this wealthy? Edmond gives him the simplest answer imaginable. I sold my soul to the devil. And they both start laughing. Danglars thinks he's joking. That's cute. Faria eventually catches back up with Edmond and quietly tells him everything has been taken care of. The woman is safe and comfortable in a room in the East Wing. Now they can get back to business. And apparently, Faria has been doing his homework. Danglars has been embezzling money from his clients for years. Faria thinks it's about time those records became public. And according to him, this should be fun. Meanwhile, Ferdinand has noticed Mercedes paying attention to their mysterious host, and he doesn't like it. He grabs her arm and asks whether she's showing the Count a little too much interest. Mercedes tells him he's hurting her, but he won't let go. Instead, he reminds her that she was once engaged to one of those black beasts, and he was her second choice. Mercedes jerks her arm away. That isn't fair. Ferdinand disagrees. From across the room, Edmond and Faria are peeping the exchange. Faria looks amused. Trouble in paradise. Mercedes eventually steps away to collect herself. That's when Edmond approaches her from behind. He says people are supposed to be happy at parties, but she worries about making her husband angry. Edmond glances toward Fernand. Looks like the ship has already sailed. Mercedes tries to excuse herself again, this time because she doesn't want to monopolize him when he has guests. Edmond keeps finishing her sentences until she finally gives him a look. Am I that predictable? Edmond looks at her. You're anything but predictable. Before the conversation can go any further, a young voice interrupts them. Mother? Edmond turns and sees a boy. The kid tells Mercedes he's been looking everywhere for her. Villefort has been looking for the Count as well. Mercedes introduces them. Her son, Albert. Edmond and Albert exchange pleasantries before Mercedes excuses herself. Fernand is apparently looking for her too. And just like that, she's gone. But now Edmond knows something else about the life that continued without them. Mercedes had a son. Villefort approaches Edmond next, and everyone is very interested in finding out where this mysterious Count stands politically. With rebellion spreading through the colony, Villefort suggests Edmond could prove extremely useful, provided, of course, he isn't sympathetic to them. Edmond doesn't even let him finish. There will always be slaves and masters. It's the way of the world. Exactly what Villefort wanted to hear. The man starts selling Edmond on the enormous opportunities Saint-Domingue has to offer. Someone with his wealth and intellect, even with the colony becoming increasingly unstable. And Villefort assures him that when the obstacles arise, he has the power to make things happen. Edmond smiles. So I suppose you could say you're the one with the whip. Villefort smiles right back. I suppose you could. This man has no idea who he's talking to. Edmond tells him he has no doubt they'll be doing business together, and he gives Villefort his word. By dawn, the bodies have been discovered. The chief inspector is dragged out to the scene at the crack of dawn, already irritated and asking why the hell this couldn't wait. Then he sees what's waiting for him. 2 hired hands from a nearby plantation lie dead, and hovering over what's left of them, ravens. The inspector notices something strange. He's never seen ravens in Saint-Domingue before. One of the soldiers asks what he thinks happened. The inspector looks at the bodies. Before or after someone ripped their throats out. The soldiers wonder if escaped slaves could have done it. Possibly, but most of the unrest has been concentrated on the other side of the island. What the inspector can't get past are those damn ravens. He asks who found the bodies. Apparently, a passing carriage spotted them around first light. A carriage? All the way out here? The soldiers explain it was coming from the O'Deneville estate. That confuses him even more. That estate has been abandoned for years, but not anymore. Apparently, some newly arrived aristocrat purchased it, the Count of Monte Cristo. The inspector has never heard of him. He's quickly informed that everybody else has. The man is supposedly one of the richest people on the island, and just last night he threw a massive ball at the estate. Naturally, the inspector wants to know where this mysterious count is now. We find Edmond inside the estate's chapel with the woman he rescued the night before. She's praying, which leads Edmond to ask a question that probably says more about him than it does her. Does she really believe in God in a world like this? She says she believes especially in a world like this, though her faith is voodoo and she serves the Iwa. When Edmond gestures towards St. Peter, she explains that to those who share her beliefs, that's Papa Legba. Edmond isn't convinced. Mwen doute ça. I doubt that. She can tell he used to be a man of faith. Edmond says he still believes God exists. He just doesn't believe God gives a damn about any of them. But she can also see that his crisis runs deeper than faith. She knows Faria is a demon, and whatever happened to Edmond has left him starved for genuine human connection. I do like this moment. We've basically only seen Edmond fueled by anger since his escape, and now this woman is looking past the count and the money, the demon and all that rage, and seeing the man underneath it. She reaches for him, but Edmond stops her. Don't. She reminds him that he saved her and says the life she has now is one he gave her. Edmond hates that framing. He's not her master. She's free and she can leave whenever she wants. But she wasn't offering him obedience or her body. She was offering her spiritual essence. Help, if he'll accept it. Naturally, that's when Faria pops up, being nosy. He mocks the idea that some mumbo summoning spirits will be useful when this shit hits the fan. But she corrects him. She's not a mumbo. She's been shwal, possessed during ceremonies by her ancestral spirits, and she finally gives them her name, Heidi. Edmond decides right there she's with them. Faria accepts it and moves on to better news. Their first revenge plot is already working. Evidence of Dangler's embezzlement has found its way to law enforcement, his associates, and his clients. Villefort has warned him the officers are coming, so Danglers is cornered, desperate, and looking for somewhere to run. Perfect. Edmond tells Faria to offer him safe passage aboard the Tartarus. Sure enough, Danglers is at home absolutely scrambling. He's grabbing documents, packing whatever he can, and preparing to disappear before the authorities arrive. Then he notices something crawling nearby. A scorpion. It crawls across his hand. Dangler freaks out, jerks backward, and trips. Bang, bang, bang. Someone's at the door. He grabs his gun and walks Faria. Dangler demands to know what he wants. Faria explains that the Count has heard about his recent difficulties and believes a man with his particular talents could be useful. So he's offering him safe passage to Cuba before the Tartarus continues towards the Orient. Dangler plays dumb at first, but the possibility of escape has his attention. Why would the Count help him? Because the Count needs someone who knows how to handle the books. Creatively, so to speak. And just like that, Dangler is hooked. Oh, you greedy dumb bitch. He took the bait. Danglers is resting in his quarters aboard the Tartarus when something crawls onto his shoulder. A scorpion. He jumps up, confused. How the hell has he run into another scorpion? Then he looks around. Oh, there's not just one, they're everywhere, crawling towards him. Dangler gets the hell out of his quarters and finds Edmond steering the ship. He asks if the Count ever sleeps. Edmond turns towards him and asks if he's having bad dreams. Dangler admits in a way. Edmond tells him that, in his experience, the nightmares you really need to worry about are the ones that happen while you're awake. But Danglers doesn't quite understand what he means. Then he looks out towards the sea. Something's wrong. They're not headed toward Cuba. They're sailing straight back toward Saint Domingue. Danglers pulls his gun. He demands to know what the Count's motive is. Edmond gives him the coldest look. 2 words. Judgment Day. And suddenly, Danglers can see him. Not the Count. Not the face Faria created for everyone else. Edmond Dantès, a man Danglers never thought he'd see again. Before he can even process it, something starts happening beneath his skin. Danglers claws desperately at his face. Edmond tells him exactly what it is. The scorpions. They're crawling underneath his flesh. Dangler screams, begging Edmond to get them out. Heidi watches as Edmond finally tells him what those years in prison were actually like. The warden took pleasure in whipping him, and afterward, Edmond would lie alone in his cell while bugs and rats licked the blood from his wounds. So when Edmond started thinking about how Danglers should suffer, he took a little inspiration from his experience. Then the scorpions start bursting through his skin, and Edmond just watches, almost numb to it. Danglers beg him to make it stop, but nobody answered Edmond's pleas either. Eventually, the pain becomes too much. Danglers grabs his gun, damns Edmond one last time, and puts a bullet through his own head. Honestly, way too quick for my liking. Faria appears and tells Edmond it's done. But Edmond agrees. Danglers got off too easy. Faria isn't so sure. If Edmond considers an eternity burning in hell easy, then sure, because Danglers just killed himself. And apparently God is pretty strict about that rule. Scorpion torture or not. Faria starts counting. 1 down, 4 to go. Villefort, Mercedes, Fernand, and Albert. He wants the boy dragged into the punishment too. Edmond shuts it down. Albert hasn't done anything to him. Faria doesn't care though. To him, being Fernand and Mercedes' son is offense enough. And that's where he loses Edmond. Edmond tells the demon to leave him alone. Faria agrees, but reminds him he's never really far away. Later, Edmond sits with Haiti. She asks him something much simpler. Why name his ship the Tartarus? Edmond tells her prison gave him plenty of time to read, and in Greek mythology, Tartarus is the deepest, darkest part of Hades, the place where the old gods are imprisoned. Hades considers that, then asks, is that where we are? In hell? Edmond looks at her, and after everything he's become, everything he's done, he can only answer for one person, and that's himself. While Edmond is setting his next plan in motion, the chief inspector is having another terrible morning. He and his wife are asleep when someone starts pounding on the door. The inspector drags himself out of bed, grumbling about whatever this is. It better be important. And it is. They've got another body. And while the inspector heads out to investigate, across town, Edmond just happens to run into Mercedes. He greets her with a kiss on the hand, while the inspector is staring down at what's left of Baron Danglars. The officer at the scene explains that Danglars was already in horrific condition before he put a bullet through his own head. But there's no way he did all of this to himself. It looks like someone carved him up. The inspector takes a closer look. Not exactly. Whatever tore Danglars apart came from the inside. Meanwhile, Edmond offers Mercedes a ride home. She tells him he really didn't need to go out of his way, and Edmond assures her that he hasn't. Her home is on the way to his estate. Mercedes smiles before asking if she can pose a question she probably has no right to ask. Edmond tells her she can ask him anything. Does slavery in Saint-Domingue bother him? It must be strange, horrifying even, for a free black man to come here and witness this. Edmond gives her a much more philosophical answer. In one way or another, they're all slaves to the decisions they make, and eventually, every one of those decisions leads them toward their final destiny. But as for slavery itself, Edmond believes this system will eventually resolve itself, and those responsible for maintaining it will answer for their actions, either now or later. Mercedes studies him. He talks like someone she used to know, and she admits something of her own. She knows there's no comparison, but sometimes she feels like a prisoner herself. Fernand is possessive. Sometimes he treats her more like property than his wife. And now Albert is getting older, and he's beginning to look up to his dad, and Mercedes is terrified he'll follow in Fernand's footsteps. They reach her home. Edmond helps her from the carriage and takes her hand. The pleasure is all mine. She starts walking away, then stops. She looks back and asks if he's happy. It catches him off guard, but he tells her ecstatic. Mercedes doesn't believe him. It doesn't seem that way to me. And watching this entire interaction from the window is Fernand. The moment Edmond leaves, Faria starts whispering in his ear. He entices him to go back in now and just end it. Dance in their corpses, bathe in their blood. But Edmond tells him Villefort first. Faria notices the hesitation. Is Edmond having second thoughts? Of course not, at least that's what Edmond tells him. Back inside, Fernand comes down the stairs towards his wife. He asks if she enjoyed herself, then smack. He sneers, saying he'd forgotten she had a taste for dark meat. He tells her he won't forget a second time. Mercedes sits on the floor, stunned and crying, and before he walks away, Fernand calls her his pet. Back at the Monte Cristo estate, Edmond receives another visitor, the chief inspector. Edmond welcomes the chief inspector beside the fire, and the man gets straight to business. Murder. Several of them, particularly gruesome. Edmond gives him his best concerned aristocrat performance and offers whatever assistance he needs. But why bring this to his doorstep? Because 2 victims were found only a few miles from the estate, and the third was Baron Danglars, a man the Count had recently befriended. Edmond feigns shock. What a terrible coincidence. The inspector gives him a look. In his profession, coincidences are remarkably rare. Message received. Once he's gone, Faria appears and points out the obvious. The inspector suspects him. His solution is equally predictable. Kill the inspector and his wife in their sleep. But Edmond refuses. He won't spill innocent blood. Faria laughs. No one's innocent. Outside, the assistant questions whether a gentleman of the Count's standing could really be involved. The inspector doesn't care about the title. The Count arrived and then bizarre murders began. His assistant wonders if voodoo or possession could explain what they've seen. The inspector isn't normally superstitious, but something about these murders feel ungodly. And while they're speculating about voodoo, Edmond and Haiti are walking into a ceremony. A group of escaped slaves have gathered deep into the forest. Edmond studies the religious figures before them. St. Patrick, St. George, St. Peter. The woman leading the ceremony corrects him. Dambala, Ogu, and Papalegba, guardians of the crossroads. She studies Edmond just as closely. He was once a man of faith, but now he has the look of the diable in his eyes. The devil. Edmond looks around at the escaped slaves surrounding him, and they have the look of people who desperately want to be free. Haiti introduces the woman as Manman Benice. She's helped them guide since the earliest uprisings. Their faith gives these people unity, strength, the courage to stand against their oppressors even when doing so may cost them their lives. Manman Benice calmly corrects her. Only the flesh dies. Haiti introduces Edmond as the Count of Monte Cristo, a man with both the means and the will to help their rebellion. Manman isn't convinced. How does she know he isn't a loyalist spy? Because Haiti watched him kill 2 slavers to save her life. Edmond adds something much more useful. His ship is carrying weapons and ammunition. Manman raises an eyebrow. And crates will be left in the clearing in the woods. For them. Now she understands. She steps closer and studies him. You were a slave. Edmond nods. A slave from Saint-Domingue. Manman corrects him. Saint-Domingue is the name the French gave their colony, the land beneath our feet. This be Haiti. She thanks Edmond on behalf of her people. She can also tell, however, that freeing them isn't the only reason he's returned. Edmond keeps that part to himself. As he walks away, Man watches him. It's a shame, she tells Haiti. He walks with a demon, and like all cursed men, he's lost. Haiti isn't so certain. Maybe. That night, former magistrate Villefort is asleep beside his wife when Faria grabs him by the throat. Villefort struggles, slashes wildly, and suddenly wakes up somewhere else entirely. He's sitting in the middle of the field, and there's a knife in his hand, but that knife is buried in the neck of an enslaved man. Several others witness the entire thing. Villefort stares at them in horror. It wasn't me. Good luck explaining that. He bolts back towards the house and slams the door behind him. Then something comes crashing through the window. Edmond is sitting alone in the chapel, eyes closed, meditating, and somewhere inside his mind, Faria is pounding on the door. Let me in! Edmond refuses. Leave him alone. This isn't what he agreed to. He wanted freedom, but increasingly it feels like he traded one prison for another. Faria is furious. He already warned Edmond, vengeance has a price. Blood, souls, death. That's the bargain. But there's something else bothering Faria. There's one part of Edmond's mind he still can't enter. One place Edmond keeps completely locked away. What is he hiding? Faria pushes harder, but Edmond pushes back. Stay out. And finally, we see what's behind that door. Mercedes. After everything Edmond claims to believe about her, she's still the one thing he refuses to give the demon. And in his mind, an image of her warns him. Faria is the father of lies. He eventually backs off. Faria has prepared a little surprise. Villefort races to his home calling for his wife. They have to leave. The slaves are revolting. But then he sees her, hanging from the chandelier. Faria appears and mocks him. Faria can't believe the chandelier managed to hold her. Jesus Christ. Outside, Villefort's estate is falling apart. The uprising has reached his doorstep. Faria tells him they don't have much time. Once the rebels finish dealing with the hired hands, they'll be coming for him. Villefort begs to know what Faria wants. He says nothing. In fact, his employer wants to help him. Villefort looks towards his dead wife. Faria tells him to forget her. She's a little beyond helping. If Villefort wants to survive the mob outside, he needs to come with him now. Mercedes is trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding around them. Danglars is dead. The plantations are burning and the enslaved are rebelling. Villefort's wife has been murdered, and Villefort himself has disappeared. Mercedes wonders if he could still be alive. Fernand doesn't think so. She points out something is strange. All of these people were connected. 15 years ago when Villefort convicted Edmond Dantès. Fernand tries to brush it off. They were merely business associates a lifetime ago. But Mercedes remembers. Faria delivers him directly to the Count. Villefort is hysterical. His wife was murdered, his plantation burned. Faria can't resist correcting him. The slaves didn't hang his wife. They never would have gotten her onto the noose. That was him. Edmond is getting real tired of this demon. Villefort demands to know what the hell is happening. Edmond looks at him. You don't remember me? He looks a little different now, so Edmond drops the illusion. Villefort's face drains. Impossible. Edmond Dantès should be dead. How in God's name? And then Edmond screams, not in God's name. Behind Edmond, Faria rises into his true form. In mine. Villefort backs away in terror. Edmond asks him a question. Did his wife ever know what he did to the enslaved women in the middle of the night? Probably not, considering Villefort cut out their tongues and sewed their mouths shut afterward. Edmond tells him there's no bribing, lying, or manipulating your way out of what's coming. In this moment, Edmond dreamed about it every day for 15 years. Faria practically salivates. Whatever Villefort experiences in hell will make tonight feel like paradise. He's almost jealous. Villefort begs Edmond for mercy, but Edmond picks up a whip. Has Villefort ever been whipped before? Silly question, of course he hasn't. Because there's no way to explain that kind of pain to someone who's never felt it. The crack of the lash, your skin splitting open. And as you're begging someone to stop, you realize they simply don't care. Villefort begs again. Please, mercy. Edmond pauses. He remembers saying something very similar once. Crack! Where was your mercy? And like Jamie Foxx in Django Unchained, he starts whipping his ass. Villefort can't take it anymore. Faria almost seems disappointed. Already? Villefort spent weeks delighting in Edmond's torture and can't survive a fraction of the same treatment? Pathetic. Edmond realizes the problem. Weak heart. He says, here, let me show you, and reaches into this man's chest and rips his heart out while the man is still staring at him. Then Faria opens his mouth and consumes whatever essence leaves Villefort's body. Edmond watches, and for the first time, he looks genuinely disturbed by what his revenge has become. Faria notices. Do I repulse you, Edmond? No. Faria smiles. Liar. Because Edmond still thinks he's the hero of this story. Faria decides to remind him exactly who he's sharing a body with. He shows Edmond what he once was, an angel before the fall. They soared through heaven. God cherished them. Then humanity came along, fragile creatures crawling through filth and waste, and somehow God loved them. Faria could never understand it. How could something so divine love creatures he considered so beneath him? And suddenly, Faria isn't just Edmond's weapon anymore. We're starting to understand his hatred too. The next morning, the inspector arrives at Villefort's abandoned estate. The hired hands are dead, the enslaved people are gone, and Villefort's wife is still hanging from the chandelier. Then they spot something familiar. The ravens. Again. At this point, even the inspector is starting to think these murders are more than human brutality. They look occult. And for the first time, he says what he's been thinking. I believe the devil has come to Saint-Domingue. Faria tells Edmond to pay attention. Apparently, the hocus pocus is about to begin. Man Beneath raises her hands towards the sky. Beneath the shallow graves in front of them are 3 slave owners the rebels captured and buried 2 days earlier. She calls out, Leve, leve, rise, rise all who slumber beneath this ground. For a moment, nothing. Then hands start pushing through the dirt. One by one, 3 sickly-looking men claw their way out the graves. And yeah, they do look like zombies. Man Beneath gives them a simple command. Go home. And they obey. Edmond watches them stumble away, completely baffled. Were those men actually dead? Haiti explains. They certainly thought they were. Man used a powerful drug, a spell powder that slows the body and creates the sensation of death. Then they buried the men, and the lack of air weakened them further, clouding their minds and leaving them extremely susceptible to suggestion. So now these 3 men believe they've risen from the dead. They'll attack their own families, or their terrified, superstitious hired hands will kill them first. Either outcome works because it creates chaos, and more importantly, it spreads fear throughout the colonizers. Man Beneath watches the men disappear into the distance. Jugement! Judgment. Faria looks over at Edmond. See? Hocus pocus. Meanwhile, the inspector has finally found Villefort. One look at the body tells him this was no suicide. There's a massive hole in Villefort's chest, and his heart is gone. His assistant has never seen the rebels do anything like this. Neither has the inspector. He doesn't think the uprising killed Villefort at all, and now the murders are starting to form a pattern. The first 2 men died fast, violent, impulsive killings. Danglars and Villefort were different. Whoever killed them took their time. They were made to suffer. So they aren't random murders, they have to be vengeance. And all of this happened when the Count of Monte Cristo arrived. The assistant asks how can he be so sure they're connected. The inspector points directly to his nose, because this tells me so. Back at a local tavern, Edmond sits alone with a drink. Well, as alone as Edmond could ever be. Faria appears beside him. He tells him demons don't drink and go away, but Faria reminds him that they're only a few moves away from checkmate. Danglars is dead, Villefort is dead, and yet Edmond still isn't happy. As they leave, Faria finally names the reason, Mercedes. Edmond's expression changes. He tells him to go to hell, but Faria laughs. You say the darnest things. But Edmond finally admits what he's been avoiding. Maybe he was wrong about her. Faria doesn't care. The pack still includes Fernand, Mercedes, and Albert. And once again, Edmond draws the line at Albert. The boy has done nothing to him. Faria insists Albert must die anyway, and worse, Edmond has to be the one to do it. That's when Edmond really starts asking himself how the hell he got here. Does he regret the money, the power, the revenge, even his supposedly self-righteous effort to liberate the enslaved? That last one sets Edmond off. Self-righteous. I was a slave. He grabs Faria, and Faria answers by pinning him against the wall by the throat. Then the demon calmly reminds him of the part Edmond doesn't want to hear. God gave him free will. Faria can tempt him, offer him power, and put revenge in his hands, but Edmond still chose to take it, and that's a nasty truth he has to sit with. Before leaving, Faria tells him to go see his precious Mercedes one last time. When it's over, he's certain Edmond will discover he was right about her all along. Then the chief inspector finally cracks the connection. Danglars and Villefort were both tied to an old case in Paris, the one that condemned a man to a slow death in Château. Danglars served as a secret witness. Villefort prosecuted the case. And the man they sent away, Edmond Dantès, and the Franchi and former captain of the Pharaon, a position Danglars conveniently took over after Edmond disappeared. Dantès supposedly died years ago, so connecting him to the Count is a long shot. But there's one way to test the theory. A second secret witness in the case is still alive, Fernand Mondego. And if these murders really are revenge for what happened 15 years ago, Fernand is next. Meanwhile, Mercedes is alone in the chapel praying. She quietly recites the Hail Mary. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners. Before she can finish, a familiar voice behind her does it for her. Now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mercedes turns. The Count. She remarks that he has a habit of appearing in the most unexpected places. Edmond wonders if she's surprised to see him in a church. After all, he was a man of faith once. Then he asks if she's here seeking forgiveness. Mercedes gives a simple answer. Aren't we all? The two leave the chapel together. Edmond tells her there's actually something he'd like to discuss. He's hosting a small gathering at his estate tonight, and he'd like Mercedes, Fernand, and their dear son Albert to join them. He knows it's extremely short notice. Mercedes cuts him off. Extremely. But Fernand would positively kill her if she turned down the invitation. Girl, considering what we've seen from that man, maybe let's not phrase it like that. Edmond tells her it's a date. Before she leaves, he notices something is bothering her though. Mercedes hesitates. She feels that she has a strange feeling that she's met someone before, even though she knows it would be impossible. Oh, she knows something. Edmond doesn't give himself away. He simply tells her that if life taught him anything, nothing is impossible. And with that, they part ways. Later that evening, the Mondego family arrives at the estate. Fernand is surprised to find the house so quiet and asks where the other guests are. There aren't any. They're the only guests. Fernand wasn't expecting such an honor. To what do we owe it? Edmond gives him a simple answer. Homecomings. And something about that word hits Mercedes. She looks at the Count again, really looks at him, and somehow sees straight through Faria's illusion. Edmond. It shouldn't be possible, but she knows. Faria notices too. He hadn't expected that kind of insight from a mere mortal. Well, no point in pretending anymore. He reveals his true form and cheerfully announces that they can dispense with the formalities and get down to the butchery. He looks at Edmond. Drumstick or thigh, sir? Mercedes barely cares about the demon. She stares directly at the Count. Edmond, it is you. Wondering what pit of hell he crawled out of, but Edmond stands. It's the one you cast me into, but hell works just as well. Now Fernand gets to answer for framing him and stealing the life Edmond was supposed to have. Edmond vaults over the table. Draw for your life. Their swords begin to collide. Fernand is still cocky. He was raised a nobleman and trained in swordsmanship for childhood. Edmond used to come up short every time. He mocks Edmond's low breeding and bad technique. Slash. But Edmond counters and opens up his cheek. Oh, things have changed. Turn the other cheek or I'll cut that one too. Fernand calls him mad. Maybe. Come on. The fight continues. Meanwhile, the chief inspector reaches the Mondego estate looking for Fernand. The whole family is out at a dinner engagement. Where? The estate of Count of Monte Cristo. Oh shit. The inspector and his assistant take off. Back at the estate, Edmond and Fernand are still going at it. Their swords clash again and again, But Fernand's earlier confidence is disappearing. Edmond can't resist. How are my fencing skills now? Fernand doesn't answer. Instead, he turns around and runs. Edmond almost can't believe it. This man is really about to abandon his wife and his child. Mercedes and Albert look just as disgusted, but Fernand doesn't care. Against some unholy monster? Absolutely. Then he pulls out a gun, because apparently he's done bringing a knife to a gunfight. Faria levitates Mercedes and Albert off the ground, still fully prepared to make them part of Edmond's revenge. But watching Fernand abandon them has proven something. The only life Fernand has ever truly cared about was his own. Fernand aims directly at Edmond's chest, right over his heart. The bullet hits, but Edmond barely reacts. He looks down at the wound, then back at Fernand. My heart is the least vulnerable part of me. Oh, that's cold. Edmond reminds Fernand of the difference between them. Fernand has always been free, privileged, entitled, and white. He's never known the indignity of being treated like property or having another person claim ownership over his life. But today, he will. Dark green energy swirls around Fernand as lost souls rise beneath him. Edmond explains that they don't have to kill him. They have eternity to feed, and they can keep him balanced on the edge of death for years. Fernand finally begs, "No, Edmond, for the love of God." But Edmond looks at the man who once called himself his best friend. "Goodbye, my dear old friend." And the souls drag Fernand down into hell. Faria turns towards Edmond, expecting him to celebrate. "This is what you wanted, no?" But that's exactly the problem. Edmond finally got the revenge that kept him alive for 15 years, and it feels like nothing. Shallow, colorless, tasteless. Faria reminds him that this is what he begged for in that cell. Look how far you've come. From bondage to wealth, power, a title, you're practically a god. But Edmond finally sees what revenge has made larger than life. His enemies weren't monsters. They were weak, flawed, petty humans. And destroying them didn't give him back a single thing they took. Unfortunately, Mercedes and Albert are still floating in the damn air. How long are they going to be up there? Faria is more than ready to finish the job, but before Edmond answers, Haiti enters with men. Edmond tells her to take Mercedes and Albert and go to the ship. Faria casually plucks a grape, curious where this sudden change of plans is going. Edward looks at him. My revenge, my way. The inspector has officers comb the Monte Cristo estate, but the entire place has been cleared out. No servants, no workers. No enslaved people, not even the Count. Then reports start pouring in from plantations across Saint-Domingue. Escaped slaves are attacking them, freeing everyone they can and burning the plantations behind them. And every person they liberate joins the growing rebellion. There are already thousands of them, and somehow they have rifles. The inspector has a pretty good idea where those came from. He's heard enough. He abandons the search and tells his men to gather their families and make plans to leave Saint-Domingue. Because very soon, he fears this land won't belong to France anymore. He looks back at the empty estate and says, "You win, Count of Monte Cristo, whoever you are and whatever you are." Aboard the Tartarus, we're down to our final players. Edmond, Mercedes, Albert, Haiti, and of course, Faria. Faria notices the missing crew and learns Edmond sent them off for the fight for their country. Good. That leaves only the main cast of their little play. One final act, tragedy or comedy. Mercedes wants to know why Edmond is doing this, but he says it plainly. He believes she betrayed him, and because of that, he spent 15 years rotting in hell. Mercedes doesn't run from the accusation. If that's truly what he believes, then he can kill her just like Fernand, Danglars, and Villefort. You killed them, didn't you? Edmond admits it, yes. And now Mercedes understands the hatred. He thinks she testified against him. Edmond asked the question he's carried for 15 years. Didn't you? No. Faria cuts in, insisting she'll say anything to save herself and Albert. But Mercedes says she knows what actually happened. She didn't learn the truth until the day that word arrived that Edmond had died at the penal colony. We flash back to Fernand, Danglars, and Villefort together, celebrating and rejoicing that Edmond Dantès was finally dead and their secret died with him. Except Mercedes overhears them. That's when she learns the whole conspiracy. Fernand wanted her. Danglars wanted Edmond's position aboard the Pharaon. Villefort needed to protect his father from treason. Danglars overheard Captain Leclerc giving Edmond the letters, followed him, and helped trace the conspiracy back to Bertrand and Villefort Sr. The betrayal came from them, not Mercedes. Faria interrupts. Lies! He calls her desperate and manipulative, but now there's another voice in the room. Haiti, looks at Edmond, then at Mercedes. She speaks the truth. Faria moves towards Mercedes and Albert. He'll help Edmond finish this. Desperately, Haiti looks at Edmond. He knows Mercedes is telling the truth. And worse, Faria has always known. The demon grabs Albert and holds him in place. I have him, Edmond. But Faria can't do this part for him. Edmond has to be the one to kill the boy. He has to choose it. Edmond raises the gun, and Faria urges him on. Do it now, and we'll live like kings for 50 lifetimes. Edmond takes aim. Mercedes screams, "He's your son!" Edmond doesn't lower the gun. He simply whispers, "I know." Blam! But the bullet isn't for Albert. It hits Faria, sending the demon flying over the side of the ship. Edmond looks at Albert. He'd already figured it out. The moment he looked in the boy's face, he saw himself staring back. Albert is his son. His and Mercedes. Mercedes tells him Albert has his eyes. She planned to tell Edmond on their wedding night, but they never got one. After Edmond was imprisoned and eventually declared dead, she married Ferdinand because she thought Edmond was never coming home, and she had a child to protect. Ferdinand spent all these years believing Albert was his. And suddenly, Faria's obsession with making Edmond kill this boy makes a whole lot more sense. Unfortunately, demons don't die that easily. Faria launches himself back onto the ship, and now he's pissed. After everything he's done for Edmond. That wasn't very nice. But Edmond understands the game now. Faria lied to him and steered him toward this exact moment because their integration was never complete. To seal the pact, Edmond had to willingly murder someone innocent. Everyone he killed so far had blood on their hands. Mercedes and Albert didn't. Killing the woman he loves and their son would have completed his revenge. It would have completed his damnation. Faria gives him one last ultimatum. Finish the pact, or he'll kill Edmond and slaughter them himself. But Edmond has finally spotted the flaw in their unbreakable union. If it were truly complete, Faria would have been able to enter every part of his mind. He could never reach Mercedes. Faria smiles. Clever boy. Mercedes begs Edmond to fight. God still sees him, and God still loves him. Haiti gives him the more practical reminder. Faria is the one who gave Edmond his power, which means Edmond can use it against him. Edmond turns towards the demon. You gave me power, Faria, more than you know. Faria drops the axe, and his human appearance tears away, revealing the demon underneath. He threatens to devour Albert and wear Edmond's skin. He'll become the Count of Monte Cristo himself. The two collide. Candles crash to the floor, and flames begin spreading across the Tartarus while Edmond and Faria tear into each other. Faria keeps reminding him that this fight is impossible. Edmond is only human, and worse, he's a slave. But according to Faria, that's all he'll ever be. Edmond doesn't even entertain him. He screams for the others to run. Haiti cuts loose one of the escape boats. Mercedes, Albert, and Haiti climb aboard as the Tartarus burns behind them. Faria sees them escaping and promises he'll come for them. But Edmond makes damn sure he never gets the chance. The ship is completely engulfed now. Faria laughs. Edmond loses. And if it's any consolation, it's hardly his fault after all. He's only a man. But Edmond looks at him and says that's good enough for me. Faria reminds him, you cannot defeat a fallen angel. Edmond raises his sword, slash, and takes his head off. As Edmond walks away, Faria's severed head keeps laughing. See you real soon, Edmond. Then, boom, the Tartarus explodes. From the escape boat, the others watch it burn. Haiti realizes this fight was never really about whether Edmond survived. He was fighting for his soul, and she believes he won. Mercedes isn't so sure. As far as she can see, she's lost Edmond all over again. Then Albert notices something moving through the water. Mother! Someone's coming toward them. Mercedes' face lights up. Edmond? But Haiti looks closer. Nope, the demon. Faria's decapitated head comes floating toward their boat, asking permission to come aboard so he can kill every last one of them. Mercedes raises the gun. Permission denied. Bang. That girl said absolutely the fuck not. Haiti warns him that something like Faria can never truly be destroyed. Eventually he will return. But then she notices something else in the water. This time, it really is Edmond, and for the first time in years, there's no illusion covering his face. No count, no demonic disguise, just Edmond Dantès. He climbs aboard. Mercedes embraces him. Then Edmond reaches towards Albert, his son, and quietly says, "Thank you." Together they sail back toward the island, back toward the revolution. In the distance, the entire country seems to be burning. Mercedes looks toward the horizon. It looks like the whole country is on fire. Edmond understands the fire better than most. For 15 years, he burned with a vengeance, and now he understands where the road leads. Revenge is a fool's game, but these flames, these are not the flames of revenge. They're the flames of justice. Albert asks what happens now, and what would they be returning to? Mercedes doesn't know, and neither does Edmond. But until God decides to reveal the future to man, Edmond says all human wisdom can be contained in 2 words: wait and hope. Haiti looks towards the burning shoreline. The revolution has begun. They left the French colony called Saint-Domingue, but that's not where they're returning. Edward looks towards the island. They're going home to Haiti. The end. And that is the Curse of Monte Cristo. I love that Edmond's story ends back in Haiti. He returns to the same place where he was once enslaved, except now both he and the country are fighting for freedom. Now danglers, in my opinion, got off way too easy for me. But overall, I really enjoyed this. It took the Count of Monte Cristo, added demons and horror, and still kept revenge, freedom, and faith at the center. And Faria, funny as hell. Terrible influence, 0 stars as a spiritual advisor. So for my final grade, A-. Also, we hit over 10K subscribers, which is actually fucking insane. Thank you for listening to me yap about comics every week. I really appreciate you, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Be sure to hype, subscribe, and like. It really helps me do the things that needs to be done, and I want to do the things with you, so yeah. No, but for real, thank you guys. Have a good one.